So we were discussing restriction endonucleases, if you remember, and then we discussed most of the examples of restriction endonucleases, which were bacterial. You remember that E. coli, Haemophilus influenzae, and so on, right? But then it is known that not only bacteria, but some eukaryotes, some viruses, some archaea, they also contain restriction enzymes. So just this information I thought I should tell you, that it is not just limited to bacteria, but you have viruses, yeah, you have eukaryotes as well. The other point that I wanted to tell you was about the number. So the restriction enzymes that have been discovered to date are huge in number. So something around 3,500 restriction enzymes have been reported. But out of these 3,500, only about 500 or so are commercially available. So what people have done is that they have purified these restriction enzymes from certain bacterial strains, and then they commercialized it, because it is these restriction enzymes which are used for gene cloning, and they are used under in vitro conditions. So you use purified restriction enzyme, and then you perform restriction digestion of a particular DNA for gene cloning. So around 500 of these enzymes are commercially available. The other information, so this is just for information. So the other information is that the number of restriction enzymes class vary from bacteria to bacteria. So for example, in case of Helicobacter, it's a gram-negative bacteria. There are something around 14 types of restriction enzymes have been reported. Likewise, in Neisseria, I think people have reported around 4 to 5 or even 7 different types of restriction enzymes. So the point I'm trying to tell you is that the numbers, it is not that just one strain will contain one type of restriction enzyme. You can have strains which can contain more than one type of restriction enzyme. The other thing that I wanted to discuss was about the restriction modification system. So we did discuss the modification enzymes in the last class, and we discussed that there are two enzymes. So these are DNA adenine methylase. So that is why it is called DAM, adenine methylase. D for DNA, A for adenine, and M for methylase. Methylases are also called as methyl transferases because they can transfer methyl group. They can methylate a particular residue. So likewise, DCM is DNA cytosine methylase. So the sequences that they selectively methylate are, for example, GATC. So this is the recognition site, and then the A will get methylated by DAM methylase. Okay. By DCM methylase, the sequence that will be methylated will be CCWGG, and W will be A or T. These are two commonly used methylases which are present in E. coli, but other than that, there are many more examples of methyl transferases, and their recognition specificity varies in the sense that the recognition sequence, for example, for DAM is like a 4 nucleotide, whereas for DCM it's a 5 base pair. Likewise, the type of methylation can vary. For example, DAM methylase actually.
Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am, so these two sequences are palindromes. Is that related to this?
Sorry.
Ma'am,
They
these two
say it
sequences are,
again. Huh?
these two sequences are palindromes.
These two sequences are palindrome. Palindrome, I'll come to it.
Okay.
So, palindrome and non-palindromes we are going to discuss in today's class, but DAM and DCM, the recognition sequence are specific, like GATC, wherever it will find GATC.
Ma'am,
Yes,
here,
Ranish.
here, why do we need like palindrome? Like,
That is why we'll come back to this issue, palindrome and non-palindrome, in a second, when I'll be teaching you the types of restriction enzymes. Just wait.
Okay.
Just 5
Uh,
minutes.
but methylase is not an restriction enzyme, right?
Right, but then they are actually present together. That's why you hold on. I'll come back to it.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Huh. So, but then this part is clear, right? Ki it is going to methylate the A of GATC, or in case of DCM, it's going to methylate the second C. It's not going to methylate the first C. So that is something which is specificity, right? So this is about DAM and DCM methylases. So for example, DAM methylase actually methylates, for example, let's say the fifth position, but then for example you can have positions, let's say hydroxymethylation, methylation, or 4-methyl cytosine. So these are different variations that are possible. So the possibilities are not only in terms of methylation but also in terms of the recognition site. Okay, so that is how you have different types of methyl transferases available. They differ with respect to the recognition sequence, they differ with respect to the methylation pattern. For example, whether it's just 5-methyl adenine or 5-hydroxymethyl adenine, something like this, or 5-methyl cytosine or 4-methyl cytosine, right? Okay, and then we also discussed the naming of restriction enzymes. So I thought maybe if the class, let me see, I'll just open the tapes. Yes, Deepak, Ayush, Bhavya. Okay, yes. Okay, so who is going to try the naming of these restriction enzymes one by one? What's the name of this restriction enzyme obtained from
I'm
the
Eco
first
RY13.
R1? Yes, so RY13 is also fine, but then in this case, this one is also eco R1. Okay, next.
Damage.
The other thing is that when it's the first enzyme which is discovered, they name it as 1. So it's BAMH, which is correct, and then 1. Next.
SMA one.
Very good.
One, ma'am. Yeah.
Added. Next. Deepak.
ST1.
Very good. Look, class is becoming expert. Dhwani.
SAU 3A1 or
South 3. Right? Next. Ayush.
NOT1.
Only whenever you will get this, you will be able to name the enzymes, right? Now I thought, since you have practiced this, I thought we can discuss the overhangs that are produced. So the way these restriction enzymes, and then I'll be discussing the classification as well. So for example, this is the restriction enzyme produced by E. coli, and the enzyme is EcoR1. So it cleaves between the G and the A. The sequence is palindrome. It reads the same from 5' to 3' end, GAA-TTC, and from 5' again, GAA-TTC. So ultimately it creates the ends which are called protruding ends or cohesive ends. And then we also discussed the kinds of overhangs produced. So for example, in Eco R1, the kind of overhang that is produced is 5' overhang, right? So that means it's the 5' end which is overhanging, which is hanging out. In case of PST1 class, if you see, the sequence is 5' to 3'. The cleavage is between G and A here. So the ends that are produced are 3' overhangs. In case of PBU2, you have blunt ends. So in case this is clear to you, I'll go back to this and let's see what kind of overhangs are produced by these enzymes. So EcoR1 we discussed just now. So what kind of overhang it is? Or is it clear or is it not clear?
It was a 5' overhang.
Ma'am, it is clear.
Okay. Okay, so then let's quickly finish this BAM H1.
Ma'am, how can we see by just here, just looking at this sequence?
Oh, because I
Whether
told
it is
you
5 prime, 5 prime or 3 prime.
yes, it's 5 prime to 3 prime.
But how can we say that like it is 5 prime overhang or 3 prime? Okay, I understood.
Yes,
It is all 5 prime to 3 prime.
all 5 prime to 3 prime. Okay. So next, who's going to try BAM H1? The overhangs. Anybody? Agrim is there today?
5' overhang.
Okay. This one? Overhang is there or no?
No, ma'am, no sticky ends, no.
Okay.
When these are blunt ends.
Very good. Blunt ends. PST1?
Prime over.
3' overhang.
Everybody following?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. Now knot one and so knot one actually is an 8 base pair cutter, but this I'll explain you in a second. Let me go over uh, the point that we were trying to address about palindrome versus a non-palindrome, and then I'll tell you these recognition sites can be the recognition sites of restriction enzymes can be 4 base pair, 6 base pair, 8 base pair, or 17 base pair. So I'll come back to it in a second. First, and then we'll come back to South 3A1. So the difference between palindrome versus partial palindrome. So the example is from the restriction enzymes Taiwan. The recognition site is CCWWGG, where W is A or T. So if you see the first one, is it a palindrome? Everybody is quiet. Is it a palindrome?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, very good. Next one, is it a palindrome?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What about the third one?
No, it isn't.
No, ma'am.
Yes. So this is the difference between a palindrome versus a partial palindrome. So when we say partial palindrome, so in partial palindrome, it is part of the sequence. So this A is the one which is not palindromic. So they call it as partial palindrome. You can have sequences which are completely non-palindromic. So for example, let's write a sequence which is completely palindromic. So for example, A, and then maybe C. Palindromic or no?
Ma'am, it is not bad.
It is not palindromic.
No.
No, na? So now you got the difference between uh, the sequence which is not palindromic, the sequence which is partial palindrome, and the sequence which is perfect palindrome. Yes?
Ma'am, the last one can't be like a partial palindrome.
Last one?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Oh, because of this AA?
No, AT.
AT.
First and last.
It will be TTGA. So it will not be how? So 5 prime to 3 prime is AACT, right? And then if we write the complementary sequence, it will be TTGA. No, it is not palindromic, right?
Yes, ma'am, I understood. Like, no.
If you read it from the 5 prime side, the sequence will be AGTT. Class,
Yes, ma'am.
write it. So AACT, if it is a palindrome, it should read AACT both ways, right?
Ma'am, what's the difference between partial palindrome and not palindrome? Not palindrome.
Not palindrome is like it is nowhere the sequence is matching. A C T T T G A, it is not at all matching. But with partial palindrome, if you see C C A G G, so then the 5 prime will be C C and then T T G G. So the two ends are matching. Maybe I will write it, then it will be clear.
Ma'am, in this case, last one also like two ends are matching.
Hmm. This will be GG, TT, and then CC. Yes?
Yes.
Now you say it again.
I am saying that in the last one, like AACT,
Mhm.
that is in that also the two ends are matching.
Yes, just one nucleotide, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Yes,
that was I was
just
talking.
one nucleotide. But then we can see more examples in the table that I'll be showing you. So they are all considered as non-palindromic. I'll be showing you the example.
One question, ma'am. Ma'am,
Yes.
how what is like minimum requirement for saying that it is a palindrome? Like,
So a palindrome should read both ways exactly same. Partial palindrome, the examples that I have come across, they are usually two or even three. So for example, you will find three nucleotides which are continuously same and then interrupted by two and then again three. Something like this. And
so,
non-palindromic are
so
like,
basically when
yes.
one nucleotide is matching, we say that no, it is not.
Yes, because the flanks, I mean the nucleotide is not in isolation. So that brings to the next question that whether the recognition site is a 4-base pair cutter or a 6-base pair or so let me go over that and then we'll come back to this. So these sequences class, they are not present in isolation. They are part of the entire chromosome. So it depends whether the palindrome, partial palindrome or non-palindrome sequences that we are talking about, they are what is the context and what is the I mean whether it's a 4-base pair recognition sequence and then are we talking about it's a non-palindrome or a partial palindrome, something like this, right? So we'll come back to this once you see this part. So
Okay, ma'am. Yes.
we'll come back to this. So you will find many more examples in this. And
Yes, ma'am.
so this is how the restriction enzymes are classified. So they are classified into 4 categories: type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, and actually there is a 5th category which includes intron encoded restriction enzymes or intine encoded restriction enzymes. So let's start with the first one. So the first one, can you see it or should I make further big? Is it better?
Yes,
it's legit.
ma'am. It is better. We can see.
Okay, I will read out as well. So if you see the first column, the first one is type 1 restriction enzyme. So if you see, it says that it's usually pentameric complex 2R, 2M and 1S. So that means it has two domains for recognition and cleavage. It has two domains for methylation and it has one domain for S is for substrate specificity, R is for restriction enzyme and M is for methylation. So this brings to the other point that we were discussing, that RM system. So when we say RM system, they are almost always present together. So towards the end of the class, I will show you a few videos where you can see that the methylation domain and the restriction domain and the substrate specificity domain, they are almost present together in many of the cases. In some cases, they are present, for example, the methylase domain is not present, but in some cases, for example, in this case, the type 1 category, you have the restriction domain, methylation domain and substrate specificity domain, all three are present together in the form of a pentameric complex. Type 1 restriction enzymes, they require magnesium as cofactors If you see over here, they require magnesium as cofactors. They also require S-adenosylmethionine or ADOMET. They also require ATP. The recognition site is interrupted bipartite, and this is the cleavage site. So if you see, the sequence reads as AAC and then 6 times N, and then it says GTGC, and then the cleavage is after 400 nucleotides. So this is important to note over here, that for type 1 restriction enzymes, for type 1 restriction endonucleases class, the recognition and cleavage both are separate. So recognition sequence is 400 base pairs before, 400 base pairs away from the cleavage domain. So the cleavage happens after 400 nucleotides, right? So these are the enzymes. None of the type 1 enzymes are commercially available, so they are not used for molecular cloning, but then people have studied and characterized them. Some of the examples are listed here: ECO K1, ECO A1, ECO B1. So as you see, ECO, that means they are all derived from E. coli, and strain K1, strain A1, strain B1, and so on. The next category is type 2 enzymes, and in type 2 actually the type 2 enzymes are further subclassified into different subgroups. So for example, the first category is orthodox type 2 enzymes, right? So if you are seeing the second row, these are orthodox type 2 enzymes, and we discussed a few examples of these orthodox type 2 enzymes. So these are the enzymes which are used in gene cloning or molecular cloning, and we discussed the examples like EcoR1, BAMH1, Hindi3, KPN1. KPN is from Klebsiella, NOT1, PST1, SMA1, SO1, etc. So these are all used for gene cloning. These enzymes, they exist usually as homodimer, and they have the restriction domain and substrate specificity domain together, and they exist as dimer, homodimer. They require magnesium as cofactor. So this is important to note, that all of these enzymes which are used in gene cloning, they require magnesium as cofactors. Please remember this point, class, that magnesium is required for activity of these enzymes. The recognition site is palindromic or interrupted palindromic. So in this case, most of the time the recognition site is same as cleavage site, and then like it's written, defined within the recognition site, and it can produce a 5' overhang or a 3' overhang. The next one is called type 2E subgroup of enzymes. The examples are NAR1. So with this family, with this subgroup of enzyme, the main point is that they require a second recognition site. So if you see in the column 4th, it says that a second recognition site acting in cis or trans binds to the endonuclease as an allosteric effector. So here it requires a second site for activation and cleavage. Okay, and these are again not used a whole lot in gene cloning. The next category, again, this one you need to make it little smaller. Yes, so this is type 2G subgroup of enzymes. So these are again type 2 enzymes, but type 2G. So in this case, this is RMS, that means restriction, methylation, and substrate specificity domain all present together as monomer. This requires magnesium ions as cofactor, and sometimes S-adenosylmethionine as well. The recognition sequence is non-palindromic. So Ratnesh, maybe you can have a look at the sequence, and then it cuts in a defined manner, but then it cuts a short distance away from the recognition site. So here class, the recognition and cleavage site is not the same. So you see that the sequence that is recognized as a non-palindromic sequence, and the cleavage happens slightly away. So for example, and in an asymmetric manner. So for example, if you see at around 10 base pairs away, you will have the cleavage. These enzymes are again not used in gene cloning, but then they are also studied for certain applications. The next category is type 2M enzymes. Type 2M enzymes class, you need to pay attention here. These enzymes are used in cloning, not exactly in cloning, but in general in the process of cloning. So I'll be discussing with you the applications of these enzymes. So type 2M, the reason 2M is given is that M is for methylation. So these enzymes, the strain from which the enzyme was isolated is Diplococcus pneumoniae, and therefore the enzyme is called as DPN1. This does not contain a methylation domain. It exists as a homodimer. Restriction and substrate specificity domains are present together in the form of a dimer. The enzyme requires magnesium ions as cofactor. The recognition site is a palindrome, and in fact the recognition site not only is a palindrome, but what is important is, class, you need to pay attention over here, the recognition site has to be methylated, and therefore the category is called as 2M. M is for methylation. So this DPN1 is used for cleaving methylated DNA. It can also cleave hemimethylated DNA class, but the efficiency of cleavage of hemimethylated DNA. So hemimethylated DNA is the DNA which you see immediately after replication. So that means one strand is methylated and one strand is not methylated. So that is called hemimethylated. So DPN1 actually cleaves methylated DNA, and cleavage of hemimethylated DNA is very, very poor, like almost 60 to 80 fold. The efficiency is like 60 to 80 fold less. But then the point is it cannot just cleave any methylated DNA, right? So it recognizes the DNA. So class, hear me out carefully. So this recognizes the DNA which is methylated by DAM. DAM we discussed in just now, like 5-10 minutes before. So DAM is the methylase which recognizes, if you remember, GATC. You remember that? It's an adenine methylase. You remember that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Right. Right. So 2M is going to recognize the DNA which is methylated by DAM methylase. So in E. coli, if the E. coli is wild type, and if the wild type E. coli has DAM methylase present, right? So in this case, the DNA will be methylated by uh, DNA adenine methylase, which is DAM, right? And this DNA can be cleaved by DPN1. Is this making sense or no? And we'll be discussing the applications later.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The next category is 2S enzymes. So 2S enzymes, some of the examples are FOC1. These 2S enzymes are used in genome engineering class. So these are the enzymes. FOC1 enzyme, for example, is used. The basic principle of this type 2S group of enzyme is that the recognition site and cleavage site is completely uncoupled. So you can have separate domains. You have a DNA recognition domain and you have a cleavage domain, and the cleavage is outside of the recognition domain. So the recognition site is non-palindromic. So what people have done is, like, they have used this FOC1 for genome engineering applications. So we will discuss this in the later classes, where you will learn that what people have done is, you can actually replace the DNA recognition domain, for example, with some other domain, and then you can play with the two domains. All I'm trying to say is, you can play with the two domains and try to achieve try to construct enzymes for different types of genome engineering applications. So maybe some of you, if you are interested, you can just have a look at zinc finger nucleases. They are used a lot in genome engineering applications, and in our department, Professor Sundar has worked a lot on zinc finger nucleases. So zinc finger nucleases were developed based on FOC1 restriction endonuclease. So the idea was originated from FOC1 endonuclease, where the recognition domain was replaced by the zinc finger domain. The zinc finger sequence was used, and the cleavage domain of FOC1 was used, and the two were combined to create zinc finger nuclease, which is used a lot in genome engineering. The next category is type 2T enzymes. So type 2T enzymes, they exist as heterodimer or heterotetramer. They require magnesium as cofactors. The recognition sequence is defined, and it says that the cleavage is either within the recognition site or sometimes a short distance away from the recognition site. So that finishes the type 2 category of enzymes. The next category is type 4 enzymes. So type 4 enzymes also exist as heterotrimer. So you have two R, one M and one S. They require magnesium ions as cofactor and also S-adenosyl methionine for action. In this case, the cleavage actually happens on both sides of the DNA. So for example, if the DNA is double stranded, you see that it cleaves from both the sides. This is the recognition sequence, so it cleaves at the 3' end, as well as you have cleavage from the 5' end. So ultimately this sequence will be removed. So this is a unique feature of type 4 enzymes, that they cleave the double-stranded DNA and from both the sides, from either ends of the recognition sequence. The last category is intron or intene encoded restriction endonucleases. So these are the restriction endonucleases which are encoded by introns. So far I think we had discussed in the class that introns are spliced out, you remember, and it is the
Yes, ma'am.
it is the exons which which express the protein, and it is the exons which contain the information for protein. But like in biology, every time for every other thing there is an exception. So here also there are some introns which actually encode for restriction enzymes, and these intronic restriction enzymes are denoted by I. So for example, ISCE1 is one of the restriction enzyme which is encoded by an intron. There are certain other restriction enzymes which are encoded by inteins. So inteins are actually, so I'll tell you briefly, we will not discuss in detail about inteins. Do you know what are inteins or no?
No.
So just like introns, so we had discussed RNA splicing, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So in RNA splicing, what happens is that you have exon, and then you have intron, and then you have exon, and then you have intron, and then you have exon. And then we discussed that introns are removed and exons are joined together in different manner. Exon 1, 2, 3, exon 2, 3, exon 1, 3, and so on. Alternate splicing. But then, so this is RNA splicing. Now, there is something which is called protein splicing. So just we usually discuss in the course combinatorial biotechnology. So protein splicing is that what happens is that the proteins, right? So once you have the polypeptide chain synthesized, right? Once you have the polypeptide chain synthesized from the messenger RNA, class. So this polypeptide chain, before it is folded and forms a functional protein, many of these polypeptide chains contains regions which are called extine, intine, extine, extine, and so on, right? And what happens is that these intines are spliced out, they are removed, and extines are joined together. And they lead to the formation of a functional protein. Okay, so for example, in case of Saccharomyces, the replication protein, the partitioning proteins, they all have intines. And is this clear or not clear?
I'm clear.
So what I wanted to tell you over here is that, class, there are some exceptions where intines and introns, they result in functional protein, functional endonuclease. So when it is intron encoded, it is represented by the simple I, and when it is intine encoded, so intine is actually from a polypeptide chain, so therefore you will find the two alphabets pi here. So pi means intine and I means intron. Is it clear or no?
Yes, ma'am.
So
But
I would represent
but
intron and pi would represent intine. It's from polypeptide chain. The other thing is that the recognition specificity is very large. So in this case, for all of these, they have clubbed together. So the recognition site is 12 to 40 base pairs. For ISCE1, it is actually 17 base pair. The reason I specifically mentioned ISCE1 because ISCE1 is also used a lot in genome engineering purposes. So the recognition site for ISCE1 is 17 base pairs, but then there are a few others where the recognition site can vary from 12 to 40. Ratnesh, you are asking something.
no, ma'am.
Nahi? Okay.
Ma'am, I was asking like intines and introns. Why can these two be in one restriction enzyme? Like if first we have introns, and that is from DNA, and that is whether that is not a cutout while messenger RNA is formed, and then
Yes.
again we have what is called a protein, and then protein that will be also, like in that case also intine is there, that should be cut out. In both of these are matching at one place, and
No, they are not at one place. Okay. So
yes, the process happens at two stages, but
no.
in restriction enzyme those two are available.
Nahi, Ratnesh, that they are not happening at two stages. They are two completely different processes, right? So in one case, the introns which is making is from a different DNA, right? And then I mean the source is different. Are you getting my point? So that is why I told you ISCE1 is intron encoded. PIPSP1 is intine encoded. Pi is polypeptide. So this doesn't mean that it is originating from the same sequence. So are you thinking that it is the same restriction enzyme? No, they are different. That is why the names are PP. Is that the question? They are all different enzymes. And the sources are also different. See, SCE, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, ISCE1. So SCE is from
Ma'am,
Saccharomyces
just one
cerevisiae.
question.
Tell me. Yes.
Can you talk about like how that here? So how that is made? Yeah, a PIPA. How that is? How do we get that?
हाँ? Your voice is breaking. फिर से बोलना होगा. Anybody else could hear what Ratnesh is saying?
Ma'am, he probably means that how are intine coded restriction enzymes made?
Huh?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
What? Yes.
Like how PIPSP1 is
Huh?
made.
How a PIPSP1 is made? Is that the question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so as I told you, this is after. So when we say I is for intronic. So this is happening before translation. So you have pre-messenger RNA, then messenger RNA is formed. So I is intronic, right? So this is happening at the level of RNA. PI is polypeptide. So this is happening after translation, after polypeptide chain is made. Yes or no? Central dogma याद है DNA to RNA, RNA to
Yes,
protein,
ma'am.
right? So intron is present in RNA
Yes,
and
ma'am.
intine is present in DNA.
Gene is present in a protein.
Yes, polypeptide chain. Let us not call it a
Yeah, a polypeptide chain.
polypeptide chain. Yes, it is present in the polypeptide chain, and from the polypeptide chain, certain segments are removed to form a properly folded protein.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
अभी लग रहा है कुछ तो डाउट रह गया.
I will see that.
Huh? So I have written inteins are spliced out after translation.
But why are they produced in the
Why
first
are there these
place?
two stages of splicing, one in RNA, one in the polypeptide chain?
Right. So the point is that these are in different organisms. So for example, this protein splicing is even observed in, for example, certain cyanobacteria, replication proteins of cyanobacteria as well. So these are two different phenomena. Right, so it is not like in the same gene you are observing both protein as well as RNA splicing. Is this the question?
Yes, ma'am, it makes it
You need to
clearer.
frame it again.
Yeah, in my opinion, what I was feeling was the same gene is going on. I mean, both the processes are going on in the same gene with corresponding introns and inteins.
No, it is not in the same gene. So maybe I'll just show you the the nomenclature again. So see, the strains are also different, right? And the strains are also different. The source, I mean, the source is different. That's what I want to tell you.
Right,
So,
right.
so RNA splicing is like a universal phenomenon, and in eukaryotes, most of the time you will observe alternate splicing. Introns are removed only and only in rare cases that introns encode for restriction endonucleases, where, for example, in case of ISCE1 in Saccharomyces cerevisiae, this was observed. Likewise, for example, this intine encoded restriction enzymes. So these are like not very common, but then when they were discovered, people realized that they can use a whole, I mean, they have lot of applications in genome engineering. Why? Because the recognition specificity is quite long. So for example, 17 base pair for ISCE1, for some others it can be 40 base pair. So now the question is how the recognition specificity becomes important. Why and under which conditions you need a restriction enzyme, which is a 4 base pair cutter, when you need an enzyme which is a 6 base pair cutter, and under when you think you should use an 8 base pair cutter or a 17 base pair cutter. So these are the questions that we will discuss. But before that, since we were discussing magnesium ions, let me finish with the magnesium ions part first. Otherwise, maybe I'll forget this. We'll miss this part. So, because we discussed that magnesium ions were required as cofactors for most of these restriction enzymes, right? So, therefore, for the action of restriction enzymes, what is required is a buffer, right? And this is actually called as a reaction buffer. This reaction buffer comes in a 10x concentrated form. The working concentration is usually 1x. I'm not going to give you the details, but the buffer contains TrisCl. The buffer has to contain magnesium ions, right? The buffer, depending upon the different enzymes, it sometimes also contains potassium acetate. It sometimes contains glycerol. It also contains BSA. BSA is bovine serum albumin.
Is this for in vitro experiments or in vivo?
Yes, this is for in vitro experiments. Yes, because we discussed the role of magnesium ions, that is why I thought I should tell you here before we move to the next part. So I think in vivo is clear to you. In vivo part is clear to the class, like the cleavage and everything. So we discussed that there are like 3,500 restriction endonucleases discovered, but around 500 of these have been commercially available from a company called New England Biolabs. People have started manufacturing in India as well, but then New England Biolabs is one of the oldest company, and they are like pioneering the synthesis and manufacturing of restriction enzymes. So when we talk about these restriction enzymes, because they require magnesium ions, now I'm trying to correlate what all you have learned. Okay, so if you remember, we were using EDTA all the time. You remember that? For
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, ma'am.
for isolating
In
the,
isolation.
you remember that?
Yes.
What was the purpose of EDTA?
It acts as a chelating agent for the Mg+2 ions.
Exactly, yes. So now the point that I'm trying to make is that if we are adding EDTA in the DNA preparation, and now if you set up the restriction digestion with the same buffer, which is tris EDTA buffer, then do you think the enzyme will work?
No, it won't.
It won't work. Yes, na? Everybody followed?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So here what is done is that in the reaction buffer we add magnesium ions, and these magnesium ions are added in excess. The other thing that people do is two possibilities. One, the DNA that is used is actually diluted so that the EDTA concentration decreases a whole lot. Possibility 1. Possibility 2, that you just precipitate the DNA with ethanol and then dissolve it in just double distilled water or millicube water, and then use that DNA for restriction digestion, because for restriction enzymes magnesium ions are required as cofactors, and without that they will not work, right? Restriction enzymes, they also require a certain temperature. So there are certain enzymes. So for example, we discussed a few examples: EcoR1, Hindi3, we discussed PST1, right? So all of these restriction enzymes, they have a temperature optima of 37 degrees Celsius. That means they require, once you add the restriction enzyme, once you add the DNA, once you add the buffer, then you incubate it at 37 degrees. That's the optimum temperature, and usually the time that is used is around 1 hour. But there are certain enzymes, for example SMA1, which results in blunt ends. The temperature optima is 30 degrees. Okay, and you will find in some of the catalogs, you will find it even lower, 35 or 30 or even 25 degrees. There are certain other enzymes which work at even higher temperature. For example, you will find 55 degrees, right? So the temperature optima of these enzymes vary. Now, let me explain you the purpose of all these components. So TrisCl and potassium acetate are there just for buffering action. BSA BSA is there for concentrating, so it helps in, so remember, the DNA is in solution, the enzyme is in solution. So BSA It helps in bringing the enzyme and DNA together. Glycerol is added in very small amounts again for the enzyme. For maintaining the enzyme, magnesium ions they have to be there because they are required as cofactors for the restriction enzymes. So that means when we talk about these buffers, these buffer composition is very important when you are selecting. But class, when you have excess of enzyme, okay, the other point is enzymes
What is BSA used for again?
put in glycerol. Huh? Say it again.
What was BSA used for?
BSA is used for, so BSA helps in bringing the it actually brings the enzyme and the DNA in close proximity. It has a kind of aggregating effect. So these enzymes are actually stored in glycerol. When we buy these enzymes are preserved in glycerol. So when you have excess of enzyme, that means you have excess of glycerol also. The other point is that when you use, so certain other ions, manganese ions, right? Or for example, over incubation or excess glycerol. All of these class, when you use excess of enzyme or when you add certain other ions, for example manganese ions, or when you do over incubation, or over incubation, that means if the required time is 37 degrees for 1 hour, if you are incubating it for 8 hours, it's over incubation, right? Excess glycerol, it may come from buffer or it may come from again enzyme. So all of these can result in what is called as star activity. Star activity is called as the loss of specificity of the enzyme. Loss of specificity of the enzyme. So that means EcoR1 has a specific recognition site GAATTC, right? And it leaves between G and A. We discussed in today's class,
Yes, ma'am.
right? So what happens is that when we use, for example, EcoR1, and let's say 1 unit of enzyme, as per definition, 1 unit of enzyme is the amount of enzyme required to digest 1 microgram of DNA under a given temperature and conditions. So in this case, if we use excess of enzyme, or if you add excess of manganese ions, or you over incubate for like 8 hours or 6 hours, or you have excess of glycerol, under all of these conditions the specificity of EcoR1 is relaxed. When I say relaxed, what happens is that it can recognize any sequence which has let's say N, like this, or in fact the most common one is actually this one. So it starts recognizing this sequence as well. So the specificity is relaxed and it will start cleaving elsewhere as well. So this activity is called as star activity, where the restriction enzyme loses its specificity. So the point I'm trying to make is that when you are performing a restriction enzyme digestion reaction, it is very important that you are ensuring, point number 1, that EDTA should be reduced to a minimum, because otherwise EDTA will start chelating the magnesium ions and then you will say that ma'am, restriction digestion did not work. Point number 2, when you are pipetting, you need to measure 1 microliter means 1 microliter. So if you pipette excess enzyme, imagining that you are going to do better, no, it's going to give you negative results. Excess enzyme is going to have negative effect. Excess of other ions like manganese, they are going to have negative effect. Over incubation, not good. It's going to spoil the ends. Excess glycerol, not good. It's going to affect the specificity. Okay, class?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So when you are setting the restriction digestion in the reaction, actually you will have the DNA, and this DNA can be genomic DNA, and intentionally I have mentioned genomic DNA, but in fact you can also use plasmid DNA, because now I am bringing the next point that you need to understand, that about the 4 base pair cutter, 6 base pair cutter part. So the DNA can be genomic DNA or plasmid DNA. Then you will have millicube water or double distilled water, autoclaved water, right? Then you have a reaction buffer, and this needs to be 1x, right? And then you will add enzyme. Usually the volumes are kept low. So for example, the volumes are kept like in the range of 10 to 20 microliter. So the point I mentioned, genomic DNA, is class. We discussed various types of restriction enzymes, right? So we discussed that NOT1 actually generates 8 base pair. It recognizes 8 base pairs. Recognizes a 4 base pair, right? So class, can you think of, like, if we have a 4 base pair cutter, that means the recognition sequence is 4 base pair, or the recognition sequence is 6 base pair, or the recognition is 8 base pair or 17 base pair, and if we are using genomic DNA as the template, how many bands are we going to expect? Can you think of?
What is a band like?
I mean, not okay. Bands means in the gel, but let's say how many fragments you are going to get. How many DNA fragments you are going to get.
Number of recognition site +1.
Number of recognition site, Deepak, yes.
+1 means if we
Number.
get the total number of recognition site +1 will be the total number of bands will be present.
Yes, but then how many total number of recognition sites do you think will be present? Deepak, you are right, because if the but again, +1 and -1 will depend upon whether the DNA is linear or circular, right, Deepak? You
Yes,
imagine I have a ring, right? And if there is only one cleavage of the ring, it will open up and it will become linear, yes?
yes, ma'am.
And if there are two sides in the ring, then how many fragments?
There will be 3. Two. Sorry, 2.
Two, yes, right. Huh. So now you tell me, so the question I'm asking you is, how many recognition sites will be there, Deepak?
Ma'am, if it is a 4 base pair is a recognition required for recognition site, then I guess in 4,000 nucleotides there will be one such kind of a recognition site will be present, because for each position we have 4 options. So if you apply permutation combination, so
Right, very good. But then what will be the number coming? 4 to the power 4 will be how much?
4096.
Huh? So that is 4 to the power 6. 4 to the power 4 will be?
4 to the power 4.
अरे मेरे मैथ्स के बच्चे कहाँ गए? उदिता?
256.
हाँ, yes, right. So likewise, when it is a 17 base pair sequence, then it will be how much?
Sorry, but I didn't get what was happening here. Like we had 1,000 base pair long DNA. So how can we say that we have 256 restriction points?
No, it's not 256. It's that the recognition sequence is present like after every 256 base pairs. But again, we are going to discuss this in tomorrow's class. Like this will also depend upon the ATGC content.
Ma'am, but why is this necessary? Like it can be like present after say 10,000 base pairs also, right? Or it need not be present within that 1,000 base pair.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, that is
That
true.
was my question.
Yes, this is true. So we are going to discuss this in tomorrow's class. But then what Deepak said is right to an extent, because this assumes that you are talking about it's a probabilistic relationship, which Deepak has mentioned, that you are assuming that every nucleotide is present in equal proportion. Right, so for example 50% AT, 50% GC. So this is based upon this assumption, and again this is only a probabilistic relationship which is given that if it is a 4 base pair cutter, it's going to recognize a sequence. I mean the recognition site is likely to present after every 4 to the power 4 base pair, which is 256. And if it's a 6 base pair cutter, it will be after every 4 to the power 6. If it's a 8 base pair, it will be 4 to the power 8. If it's 17, it will be 4 to the power 17. And therefore, the point I'm trying to tell you is that 17 base pair cutter is going to be the rarest of all. So it's going to be a rare sequence which is present in the chromosome. But don't worry, we are going to discuss this with Shantan in tomorrow's class. But any doubts from whatever we discussed today, like classification, overhangs, and nomenclature?
Ma'am, but why 4, 6, 8, 17? Is it like a magic number?
नहीं भाई, बिल्कुल कोई मैजिक नहीं है रत्नेश. 4 न्यूक्लियोटाइड है, ATGC, ठीक, इसलिए 4 नंबर यूज हुआ है. Don't
No,
worry.
no. 4, 6, 8, 17. Why just like this it is?
ये सीरीज this is based upon the recognition
Yes.
of the restriction enzymes, है ना. तो अभी तक लोगों को 4 बेस पेयर कटर मिला है, या 6 बेस पेयर कटर मिला है, या 8 बेस पेयर कटर मिला है, which are common. I mean, these are the ones which will be used in gene cloning. You will be using some of these in the labs as well.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, so keep thinking. We'll resume the discussion in tomorrow's class. And if you have any doubts from today's class, we'll discuss that as well. Okay?
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you,
Thank you,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.